worked out. Go time, everybody. Welcome, everyone, to Virtually Incorrect. I'm your host, Gunter, and this is episode number 3. Virtually Incorrect is a weekly panel discussion show about virtual reality in virtual reality. Topics interesting to the VR community will be semi-seriously discussed each week with the guest, and nothing is off limits. I want to thank the Riftmax crew for producing the show, and also Roger Essig for the great work seen behind me. And of course, my biggest thanks is to the guests, folks here in the Riftmax audience, and everyone watching on Hitbox and YouTube at home. This week, first we have Jespionage, the developer of Snowdrift, and he also co-develops on VR Chat. How you doing?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
All right, so next to him we have from Canberra, if I'm pronouncing that right, Australia, the developer of Darkfield, Skyworkxx. Yeah, and I also want to mention that Skyworkxx has been it does a workshop called Rethink, which focuses on teaching virtual reality game design, 3D modeling, scripting, and advanced AI for children ages 13 to 17. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I just wanted to bring that up. And across the table, we have NukeMarine. He's a VR community member and enthusiast, and he's helping out on the Janus project. Hey, Nuke, what's up?
Not much, still unemployed, so spending a lot of my time with this VR stuff.
Right, sure. And finally, my last guest is my good friend Additives, the developer of Dungeon Smash, an upcoming title. How you doing, Ad?
Yeah, pretty good, Gunter. Glad to be here.
All right, well, thank you all for coming. And if everyone else is ready, then let's discuss some VR. Our first story is ZeniMax claim John Carmack stole tech for Oculus. Oculus denies ZeniMax's claim. The company provided the following statement. It's unfortunate, but when there's this type of transaction, people come out of the woodwork with ridiculous and absurd claims. We intend to vigorously defend Oculus and its investors to the fullest extent. Yay. And just to kind of wrap this up, Carmack said on a tweet, "No work I've ever done has been patented. ZeniMax owns the code that I wrote, but they don't own VR." So, what do you guys think about this? I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to NukeMarine.
Yes, I read the reason being is since I've been following what John Carmack has said, what impressed me about him was he's really detailed in his videos talking about how he has to spend his time either on his SpaceX programs or when he was working VR, when he said, oh great, since they're moving it into doing VR, like when they're doing Doom 3 BFG, he can actually make it part of his real daytime job. So he was actually compartmentalizing his time working on projects, and he was vocal about this. So it's kind of odd that they were claiming that he wasn't aware on how to spend his time. Plus, as far as they're saying, Mr. Lucky needing this, they already mentioned, again, this is all over 2 years we've been following this, he mentions that, hey, he's done the distortion coding, or distortion correction on his own. Right. And he has done about he had sensors, motion sensors on his goggles. So he's done this before. John Carmack can do that idea better, which this means that, hey, that's where the copyright comes into play. So he didn't reuse code. He redid new code to go with the node idea that even Palmer is saying he's done, and it's on record as saying he's done. So I think ZeniMax is going to have a very steep uphill battle on this one, because they've got 2 years of openly telling how they've been approaching this.
When
Interesting.
I
I've been employed. I've employed some people in the past, and sometimes we have to deal with the fact of whether an employee is actually an employee or a contractor. And one of the things we do to make that determination is figure out who sets their schedule, what equipment they use when they're doing their work, and stuff like that. So it might come down to some facts like, was John Carmack at id Software using id Software computers to do the work that later became part of the Rift?
Right.
And I think they've admitted he has done that, but they didn't reuse that when he had to change over. That's the reason why he got rid of the whole promise of Doom BFG being a release. They got rid of that. So they didn't reuse code. They did new code, but they used their intelligence to do that. They didn't have to copy existing code.
Right.
Now I'll speak it from a military perspective. Is we got to be very careful on what we use for based on the job and keeping separate. So that, I mean, we got legal that says, okay, you cannot use this vehicle to go to a run to McDonald's. So I'm aware of this from a non-technical standpoint, but so this is very important. But I think John's been in the game long enough. He does this right, so he keeps his ducks in a row.
Yeah, we'd hope so, and he's a smart man. Why would he let this happen? And in the comment, I think I heard about that they didn't want me to do virtual reality there, and that's kind of why he left, and they had some terms about that. But, you know, it's devil's in the details, and I haven't read the details. Skyworkxx, have you heard of this? I'm sure you have. Do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, I think that there are two parts to that story. The first one is that obviously ZeniMax wants part of that money that was promised to Oculus in terms of that Facebook deal. I think that the second part is that ZeniMax claims that Lucky Palmer has signed that NDA, which was online for a brief moment. I didn't get a chance to read it, but it seems to me that that NDA somehow made Lucky Palmer agree that part of their concepts or the technologies they're using in the distortion shader or in the process is somehow developed or linked to ZeniMax. So I think depending on what the outcome of that NDA is, or if it's valid at all, that's going to greatly influence the outcome of that court case if there's one.
Yeah, it's definitely something to watch. It's something that can be a little scary. I don't like this whole law kind of stuff. I'm too much of a nice guy, and I like user experiences to be good, and this kind of shit is just the opposite of that. So it's kind of boring for me, honestly, in some way, but yet it's so important that I can't not take a look at it. So, Additives, you got some opinion on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, some of this could have stemmed from like a pretty standard thing in software development is having contracts for people that basically state that, you know, anything that they develop while they're working for you, even if it's in their off time, the intellectual property on that belongs to you. And probably most of ZeniMax's employees are on contracts that state things like that. I mean, that's a pretty standard thing. But as to whether or not, you know, like the specifics of this are all going to be well and truly beyond what we get to find out about. Like those kinds of contracts are confidential. It's more about what John Carmack's relationship legally was with ZeniMax. Like if he'd signed a contract that says that they own all the intellectual property he produces while working for them, then they do. They own any parts that he developed on his free time. But you know, knowing him, they probably don't have that kind of contract. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but this is just going to be the kind of thing that we'll see more and more of the longer Oculus exists and the more successful it becomes. I don't think it's going to cause huge issues for them as a business, though.
Interesting stuff. Are you guys scared of these kinds of lawsuits with, you know, those of you that are developers with your projects going forward? And we'll put that out to Skyworkxx to start.
Well, it's definitely a concern, especially with the game I'm developing, Darkfield. Darkfield is just a trademark of Logitech. Well, I use it for peripherals, but it's definitely a concern in the end. And the only thing as a developer you can do is work around that, because you don't have the time or the money to fight something like that.
Yeah, that's pretty scary. you have to have those things. It's like option. It's not optional. How about Jespionage? I think you were.
Yeah. So I got a couple things to say about that. Like, John Carmack's a big boy. This is not the first time a lawyer has talked to him about stuff, right? So I think he's probably sleeping fine at night. I think though that there's enough to this case that it's not going to get thrown out before a trial. Like, no judge would look at it and come down 100% on either side. So I think that this would go to trial if it weren't settled, which is probably, I think, how it's going to end up. That ZeniMax and Oculus or John Carmack or something like that will come to some arrangement, and this may very well be the most we ever hear of the end of this case.
All right. Good thoughts. What about you, Nuke?
Well, I'm not a developer, so I don't have a personal stake in the idea of something I create. Right. But since I'm developing websites and I want to copy, and in other words, if I create a virtual reality variant of your website, someone visits your website and then Janice translates it into a virtual world, am I actually stomping on your intellectual property, the right of you to display your content as you want it displayed? So I could see that being an impact, but that's not a technical point. And this one, and we all agree, hey, if you're developing a program, you don't want a guy working for you, copying your code and then sending it out over to some other competitor. So we do understand we want our rights protected as small developers.
Yeah. Good point. Ed?
Yeah, I really don't think there's much more to this. I mean, on my own personal thing, I try and take efforts to make sure that everything that I'm using is my own IP, or is being developed specifically for the projects that I work with, just to try and avoid this sort of thing. And it's one of those realities of working in the industry, working with other people, working with money when money is something that people want. Like, as soon as you've got money, people are going to come looking for it, and it's just,
right.
I don't know, it's the kind of thing that any developer should really be aware of, especially when they're delving into IP that's not their own. But if you keep your own IP and you keep really good, solid records of, alright, this is when I came up with these ideas, you can protect yourself from even things like, if someone else comes up with the same idea as you at the same time, then you can be in trouble with your IP if you don't have proper records documenting that you came up with it on your own. So just, it's something to always be aware of, but not lose too much sleep over.
Seems like we need some kind of IP protection. Like insurance, I mean. When you get screwed in this, you got somebody to help you out, to back you and pay for all the damage or something. Next story. Number 3. For those that haven't been Rift owners for nearly a year or more, looking back, what has amazed and surprised you? And this was posted by NukeMarine. NukeMarine says there, I don't have the exact date of the first group of Kickstarters when they got their Rift, but their anniversary should have already passed, so there should be more than a few people with more than a year's experience with the DK1. Again, this is meant for comments for those that have had a Rift DK1 or better for nearly or over a year. Please bring up anything regarding hardware, software, and the community. So I'll read a comment in a minute, but I thought I'd just go ahead and throw this out to Nuke, who started it, and tell us what you were thinking when you asked that question, and I think I've got some stuff to chime in about after we hear from others.
Well, it's, again, it's like you always think, but you kind of forget that, you've gotten used to the DK1, you've seen where it was, you try to think back when you were actually looking at every Cymatic Bruce video because you were waiting for your DK1, and
yep.
You're feeling jealous for those that had it already. I was one of the group that got it later, so I got in the June time frames when I actually got mine, and
yep.
I just wanted to think back, hey, what have you seen? Because I've seen the community change, and it seems for the better. In this community, I always hear a number of people support back every Kickstarter, and that's when I started backing Kickstarters of all, or
yep.
Helping out on every game, seeing how you feel like you're actually a part of the development process, even if it's just a matter of saying, hey, I tried it, here are the problems, and you see those problems get fixed. And I'm sure every developer here has appreciated that, having not just, because I always said, the Rift is supposed to be a developer kit, but if it hadn't been these users like me out there, I'm sure what you were developing would have been much more difficult. And I just wanted to hear what the what the comments were from the group. To remember, hey, it has been a year. Think back and see, has this been a better experience or worse experience for you?
Yeah, let me toss this over to Ad. I bet he's got some thoughts.
Yeah, there's been a lot that's come out of the community over the past year and a bit. That's really impressed me. I mean, I've had my Rift. Geez, I don't even know when I got it, but it must be coming on close to a year. I wasn't quite in the Kickstarter backers, but I was around. Everyone probably remembers when there was that huge delay on dev kits.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it was in that order as well that got delayed.
Ditto.
oh yeah, it seems like a lifetime ago. I mean, to be honest, I'm a little bit surprised to be here, like today, looking at all of.
Yeah, no
what
kidding.
Riftmax has done. I remember seeing it early on and how it's grown. Of course, I'll just talk a little bit. Like here I am doing a VR show. At first I didn't. When I'm watching Cymatics Bruce, loving his show. I always had this, show podcaster thing bug that I've always wanted to do, but didn't find, I guess, the interest that just drove me to do it. And then after hanging out with Ad and Minecraft is where we met on the Metacraft server. They had positional audio kicking there on with Mumble, and it was this amazing, experience of feeling like you're right there with people. They go too far away, you can't hear them, and here you are trying to do stuff in a hostile little environment. Even as crude as Minecraft is, it to be honest, it kind of worked out really well because crude was good because DK is a little bit crude right now, just like a Millennium Falcon crudeness. So it's cool crudeness, and it worked really well. We met a lot of friends, and a lot of them around us, and just we wanted more out of VR Social, and that's why we're doing these other things here and in VR Chat, doing the VR meetups there. Just love connecting and getting things together. So yeah, community, right? But community in VR is what I'd say is like surprised me the most. So
I was going to say the exact same thing, actually. I mean, that is the one thing that I found most surprising is that I'm not using it to do the things that I thought I would do in virtual reality, like, running around with, like,
porn. Yeah, I know.
Everyone figured out pretty quickly that first-person shooters are cool, but they're not really the best use of VR. And actually, just sitting around a table talking is like the perfect use of it. It's the most compelling thing, and I can sit here with this Rift on my face for hours and not even notice it in a social environment.
Yep. Yeah.
Great point.
And Skyworkxx, what do you think?
Well, what surprises me the most is the amount of demos or experiences that we've seen over the last year. I mean, there must be at least 1,000 high-quality demos out there. Not just people just threw together for a couple of minutes and just publish this. I mean, people that spend so much time on such a simple experience. I mean, even very simple stuff like the original Rift Coaster, it didn't take them long, but it's such a great experience, and such a great experience even 1 year in.
Yeah,
So that surprises me the most, that so many people are invested so much time into VR.
Yeah, I think Cymatic,
that
he
was
said
actually a
he
big
passed
shock.
he passed the 500 mark for the demos he's shown.
Wow.
He was saying
Wow.
1,000 demos, but Cymatic has displayed 500 demos because he keeps track of how many he's had.
Yeah, I heard him say that. Yeah.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked. I mean, originally when I ordered my Rift, I thought I would play every demo, everything that came out.
Sure.
At least
yeah.
for the first year. I thought I'd be able to keep up. And I just can't.
No. And more of us are basically getting involved. I think is a big part of it. We're not just being the enthusiasts that we started out, but we are building something, whatever that is, something, a piece of software, or again, in this case, a show. But that we want to see rich content and this medium become what it can become. And it's going to take a lot of time, but I know all of us love being here first. It's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
It's great.
I mean, that's how I
like your
started
point
out
about
as well. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, what he was saying about this community thing was amazing. I mean, you built Riftmax just to watch movies, and now it's turned into this talk show place, and some of the other places just sitting around talking. That's amazing. Was it creep? What is the term?
Feature creep?
Feature creep, but this is a positive
creep,
feature creep,
yeah.
I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no one would have thought, I don't know, a year ago that we would have a VR talk show where just sit around and talk. Back like a year ago, people were like, okay, yeah, I want to play Call of Duty in VR, or I want to play Battlefield in VR, or a racing game. But then all of the other, like,
right?
yeah, or like Janus VR. I mean, like walking around in rooms and sort of explore virtual reality internet is something that was science fiction a year ago. I guess even just being in the same room with someone, looking at the same content, if it's Riftmax, a video or a talk show, or if it's just sort of a static display of information, just being with someone at the same room is like being in a museum and walking around with your friends.
Just to read one comment from the story from Philanthropy. He's the developer relations at Oculus. He's in the UK. Probably shouldn't be surprised, and he's basically going to say what we just said, but amazed at how welcoming, honest, friendly, enthusiastic, passionate, and talented the community of developers and enthusiasts and press that are riding the VR train. I've met so many fantastic people and still continue to connect with people every day. VR is truly changing the world, and the people involved with it are making a good place to be. And that's what I'm most excited about is, this stuff changing the world, whether it's for getting kids over their dentist issues, or whether we get people together just to have great conversations and debate. I think VR is that helpful medium. In many ways, it helps me on a lot of personal levels. So that's really great. And Philanthropy actually joined the VR meetup it was either last Sunday or the Sunday after that, which was great. I don't think he had done that before. So we're even getting folks from Oculus to kind of come out and join and see what's going on. So I think that's really cool. Moving on to the next story. This one's on Sightline canceling the Indigo campaign, posted by Fruxius. I know I don't know how to say that right, but that's all right. So sadly, it looks like the Indigo, and this is a little bit old, but I wanted to bring it up. Sadly, it looks like the Indigo campaign isn't going to succeed. Just don't have the support needed for the high-quality game. A lot of people seem not to want to contribute because it's not Kickstarter. And another big problem is that we launched too early. There was a lot of pressure to launch as soon as possible to keep the musician on board. And last big problem was that recently the company that this guy was developing software for threw a lot of work at him, and basically his day job threw a lot of work at him and leaving no time for updates on Indiegogo. So one of his problems was that he couldn't do Kickstarter because he was out of the country and there was restrictions there, but now he's brought somebody, Louis Aragani, onto his team that is able to get this campaign on Kickstarter. Hopefully it'll be a success. And then he's just curious like what to do with Indiegogo at this point, as far as canceling it and whatnot. And I just thought it was an interesting story. I really like the Sightline demo. I think it's a really cool game, cool demo, a lot of neat concepts going on in there. And just wanted to bring this to the table of what you thought about this. Let me start with Jespionage.
Yeah, I think that it's hard to understand what that game is if you don't already know. Like I remember it from VR Jam, and I know what kind of revolutionary thing it's trying to do that you can only do in VR. But I think that if you look at a screenshot of it, that doesn't necessarily jump out at you, and that might be one of the problems they have as well.
Make a little design flair on top of that. Yeah,
well, they've definitely been making videos that do highlight that, but I think that's the right approach. I just think that's one of the things that might be holding them back a little.
Especially if they're going to Kickstarter this time, yeah, you'd want to definitely polish that up. The campaigns on there are usually pretty polished, and that's what you expect. And I enjoy that everything's curated there. That makes me come there. Ad, do you have something to bring to the table on this?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking for Dungeon Smash, the game that I'm working on. We're looking at doing a Kickstarter at some point into the future. And I can totally understand why you would back out of one rather than, on the Indiegogo side, why you'd back out of one rather than let it fail. and also, why you would feel that pressure. I mean, people need funds. The expectations from Kickstarter can get pretty warped. It's a pretty delicate process trying to acquire this funding, because you are really putting yourself out there. You're putting yourself out in front of, the core enthusiast supporters, the people who are going to talk about your game. And if you piss them off, if you do the wrong thing, then your game's not going to go anywhere. Like, you're not going to get the word of mouth press that's so important in this day and age.
Right.
So I can understand them feeling like, they've rushed things a bit. You can also understand why they would. I mean, like, especially really good audio guys are hard to find, and you want to keep people around. If you've got a team that's working well, you kind of want to run on a schedule that keeps that team together.
And I think most people that are doing
don't
this
really
have
have
never
anything
done it
game
before,
specific.
is the other issue, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hugely intimidating process. Like, I'm not looking forward to having to go through absolutely everything that's required to get it up and running and to get ours going. But it's certainly not something that I want to rush, and I would hate to not have Kickstarter available as a platform, because it is, dare I say it, the name brand crowdfunding. So, overall, it's an interesting thing, and maybe a little bit of a cautionary tale for other developers who are looking at using crowdfunding platforms to look at and go, okay, well, we have to at least go through and properly plan out our crowdfunding campaign and make sure we do the research as to where it should be and where our prospective audience is, and keep everything really nice and organized and tight.
VR is still a very small market, and on Kickstarter, like, the amount of money a VR game gets compared to a normal game isn't high, just because I don't think people are looking for VR games on Kickstarter yet.
I thought the main problem with this is Kickstarter, you have to be from certain countries in order to be able to go to Kickstarter. That's what helped hurt Sightline. There's also this mentality that also Indiegogo, you can scam on Indiegogo as a developer, which people are kind of wary about because they may have been burnt once or twice. I haven't personally I don't know any of the cases, but that's what I've heard.
Oh, yeah, I'd never heard of that. That's interesting. Huh.
I have heard that Indiegogo has a little bit of a reputation for, I mean, you can have campaigns that are set up in such a way that you get the money even if you don't reach the goals that you stated.
Yikes.
So, like, you go, alright, we want 30 grand, and then you raise 8 grand and you still get the cash and don't ever deliver a product. And I've heard of a few.
But I mean, in some cases this is helpful though. I mean, in some cases you don't need 30 grand even though you're asking for it. You can make the game also with 8 or 10 grand. It just takes longer to do it, or you have to rely on sort of different funding to do it. I mean, we were having the same problem.
One comment by Jerry of IndieNerds.com. He said, I think it's time for Oculus to spend some of their money on content production support. If 15K is all you need to have this finished by the time the CV1 releases, then you should strongly consider giving your help. They could give it to you in the form of royalty advance or whatever would make sense, but seeing a project as promising as yours, Sightline, go down slowly would be really sad.
Can I comment on that?
Yes.
Yeah, that is a very arrogant comment, saying, "Oh, you have money. Let me tell you the best way to spend your money," which is, we're seeing Oculus. They are trying to become producers and support games, and this is kind of like an arrogant statement, like, "Oh, you always know how to spend somebody else's money better than they do."
Yeah.
That's just what I got from that statement. Plus,
but still, somebody probably should champion
this.
for this. I would think it's important, and I'm basically curious what you guys think, because I just think though that maybe they could give support, especially now being bigger. And content's going to matter. They may have a plan for all that, and so this is moot. But would support to indie developers makes sense, and maybe it already is happening, and this was just a matter of communication, which actually seemed like what it might have been, because, Palmer did say, hey, I got your email, and apparently they'll be talking. So what do you guys think about that? Do you think Oculus should throw out some support to the, some of the best demos? All right, Ad?
Alright, so, for me, I think again, yeah, the promotion aspect is really important, but I'm not sure exactly how Oculus could do it. I mean, one big thing is there's no official sort of source that's sitting down and saying, hey, check out these demos. Like if there was an Oculus blog post once a month that just highlighted the top 4 or 5 demos out of the community that had new updates or that were really promising, that would actually really benefit the developers of those applications. Places like Engadget and Gizmodo and Kotaku and New York Times and all of these people, they read the blogs of companies like Oculus, and they publish things from there. That's where they get their news. They don't sit around trolling Reddit all day. Some of them do. But having some sort of official promotional source of news from Oculus, I think, would be a massive help. And if they invested that money maybe in employing someone who, came on and helped promote things that were being developed in the community, I think that would be hugely beneficial for individual developers to actually get a successful campaign going, to get successful things going. But on the whole, I don't think we're going to see a huge upswing in success from things like this until there's a firm date on the consumer version. Because once that happens, you open up a whole wider audience of people who are actually end consumers going, hey, alright, this thing's going to be here on this date and I want games to play on it. And I mean, we've got a lot of people who are in that boat, but it's just about widening that out. And I think Oculus could do a bit more to promote itself. But that's not going to happen again until you get something that's really getting close to actually being a consumer version, and they're looking at doing that promotional side of things. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, but I think they mentioned this, is that the Oculus can't be going, because if they offer it to one developer, then they need to offer it to all others. Otherwise, it looks like they're playing favorites. So that Oculus is, I think they're trying to play hands off. They can provide an open platform for support, and you can, as long as there's support from like Reddit or the other communities, then they can give note that, hey, this great demo's out there. Because that's what Drash is doing. He's every 2 weeks he's saying, hey, this is in the last 2 weeks, here are all the demos, including the updates that you may have missed that have been out there, and you might click on it and say, oh, okay, hey, wow, this is cool. If there's one thing I would think is, one thing I hate about Oculus Share is the whole 5-star rating, because I never liked that as a way of ranking games. What I always think is, and I've seen only one website do this, is like you click, hey, of all these games, you get to pick up the 10 of your favorites, and that's all. You can change it over time, and then they just rank like how many games are on people's favorite list. And I think you can get the best average quality that way, as opposed to just saying, hey, 5-star ratings, because people bother to click 5 stars.
I think also with that kind of model, you get the kind of thing where, people would look at Palmer's top 10 Rift games, or Cyber Reality's top 10 Rift games, Cymatic Bruce's top 10 Rift games, and those kinds of lists would be where you'd really be wanting to be. And keeping those things up to date. Again, it's just about creating more avenues for games to get positive press.
Yeah, exactly. Just to talk about STEM and how it's going to be 3 months late, and we can talk about pre-VR or any of that great hardware that's coming out, the Omni. I can tell, basically I've backed all 3 of those, so I guess that's why I want to talk about them. And just curious who's backed those things and what you think about them. And let's start with that.
Well, I haven't backed any of them because I'm a broke-ass student.
Ooh, poor band.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, help you out.
But, I don't... Is anyone really surprised that there's delays on Kickstarters at this point? Like, does anyone read STEM delayed 3 months and go, oh my god, I never would have expected that. I totally thought they would get there exactly the day that they promised. Like...
Yeah, that makes sense, right? I mean, did the Rift, come out when it was supposed to?
The Rift was delayed heavily. Like, anything that's even slightly successful, people expect to back up. I guess maybe people were thinking there would be a little bit less delay, given that they've manufactured hardware products before and whatnot. But I think 3 months is pretty reasonable. I think it's disappointing that people aren't going to get them until they've got their DK2s already. But at the same time, I think that's actually kind of a good thing, because you're not going to get people hacking a bunch of demos together where they use the extra stem trackers for head positional tracking. Because we don't need that.
Just focus
We're
on
gonna
one
get
thing.
DK2.
All right. How about you, Skyworkxx?
Well, I haven't backed the Omni or the Stem or Prio VR, but what I'm actually looking forward to is that Cyberwolf Virtualizer, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it
Oh,
seems
yeah.
to be sort of
Yeah.
an improved version of the Omni without you having to wear a special kind of shoes. And I think in one of the posts of him or someone that's closely related to the team, he was saying that they have a sort of a better design that's I think it's going to be a lot smaller. So
read
that
that
actually,
or heard that. Ad's a big fan of that, I believe.
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of that. And I mean, he's posted a lot of videos, and he seems to be very much in the party, just with what we were talking about with Kickstarter, of holding off until he's exactly ready to launch whatever sort of Kickstarter or funding method that he's going with. Like, he's really playing his cards close to the chest. But the whole actual setup around that device looks a lot better than the Omni, and it has the ability to be in a sitting or a standing mode with the harness, so you can be standing up and running around in the game and then sit down into your vehicle, which I think is going to be hugely important if you're going to actually take advantage of standing. Anyone who's worked behind a cash register knows how much of a pain in the ass it is to stand up all day.
I hate standing, but I'm
a big fan of that device. I think it looks really solid.
yeah. So I think I'm gonna back it on Kickstarter. Like if he ships it to Australia, or if the shipping is sort of is reasonably priced, because that thing's not gonna be small or light. So that was actually one of the biggest reasons why I didn't back Omni back in the day, because they were charging a lot for shipping to Europe when I was still living there. But I think that that's just one of the devices. I mean, there might be something better coming out in a couple of years' time, as well as might be probably a better alternative to the Rift. But in the end, this is always going to bring us closer to like full immersion, full body immersion, where you can actually walk around and you have the sort of haptic feedback on your feet, or I don't know, any haptic feedback device that might come out in the future. So I'm really looking forward to those innovations, because they're going to be improved on more and more.
But that's what we all really want, isn't it? Is we want to be fully immersed. Like at the moment, this is actually really good, because I'm sitting down in the seat and my feet are kind of where they're meant to be, and I'm really disappointed that I don't have arms on my chair at the moment, but this feels good. But I want to be able to stand up and walk over there, and I don't want to do it by moving a button on my controller. I want to do it by standing up and walking over there. You know, it's where this is all going.
The virtualizer might have an edge there. I mean, I do think that could be interesting. I'm still a big Omni fan because I spent so much money. I have to be, but I'm interested in trying both things. I'm not interested in buying both things at this point, but yeah, that's very interesting. I'm very curious.
Yeah, I also backed all three of those, and I can't wait for each of them in turn. Prio is definitely getting the whole body thing going on is something I'm really excited for. And as far as the stem goes, I mean, they delayed it to make it better. So as far as I'm concerned, that's a win for me. Right? I just want it to be good. Right, I wanted to reduce the jitter he talked about, and if that's what they're going to do with the 3 months, I'd rather they did that than gave it to me 3 months earlier without doing it.
Yeah,
totally
yeah, I've only backed the stem. I wanted to back Prio VR once I saw what it can do. If only anything, because the important thing with VR is putting your hands in the game. That is critical. Yeah. And if Oculus doesn't do it, and I know they want to, but if they're going to do it, they said they're going to do it right. They're not going to half-ass it. So props to them. As for the delay in STEM, I didn't expect it, but since they advertised it and they explained why it happened, same thing when they delayed the Omni with the Rift, then I accepted it, because again, they're communicating with the people. I'm an adult. I can understand as long as you talk to me and don't try to say no news is good news type thing. As for the Omni and the virtualizer, I still feel that these are, except for niche products, they're going to be commercial and industrial. So, I could see the military is going to really invest into this big time. It can be useful in commercial, like the VR arcades, because most people can't. Either it's expensive or they just can't fit in their room in a convenient way. And I can see it, and I don't see the whole walking around thing. I've been in Janus long enough. If you can just click and go to that place immediately, you're going to want to do that eventually. Finally, it's the what they were mentioning was the VR theater. I could see that where you get these Prio VRs, put them in an Omni or a virtualizer, so that now they're walking around. Now they can do this virtual reality play. I forgot the term they called it, but it's essentially everybody has a part to play, so you can just then go around as ghosts and see how the play was going out in different areas of the room, which you can do that in VR a lot cheaper than you can do it in real life, which you'd have to rent a warehouse.
Yeah. Adam?
So I was just thinking, a lot of it for me is, I have a pretty tiny, that was really weird. My actual apartment would probably barely fit this whole little discussion we're having with the five of us. But I, have spent some time just, chilling out when I need a place that's a bit nicer to relax. Grab whatever experience is taking my fancy, and I've got way more space. For me, that's one of the reasons why, even though I don't have much space, I don't even really have enough space for a couch, but I want an omnidirectional treadmill, which I could fit in a corner somewhere, so that I can get some walking around space. I can have somewhere to pace back and forward. And I could do that by moving out to the suburbs, and I could have a whole house, and I could be friggin' 2 hours travel from the city, or I can live in a tiny cramped apartment and have all of my VR gear and have my omnidirectional treadmill and maybe build myself a little virtual place, be it in Minecraft or EverQuest or whatever application is taking my fancy at the time. But I actually think, in some ways you're going to get the opposite. People with less space are going to want these things, even though they do take up a significant amount of space themselves, because they're a replacement for much larger apartments. I mean, especially, Japan has unnaturally high population density. I can imagine it being really, really beneficial for apartment dwellers, just because people need space to live in. Psychologically, it's really beneficial for us to have lots of different areas that we associate the tasks that we're doing with. It helps declutter the mind. And, the idea of a memory palace application for VR has been tossed around since before people were getting their dev kits, and that's the kind of thing that this can help with.
It's great points. I mean, I really didn't think about people in smaller spaces are going to want these things, even though they're giant pieces of hardware. But yeah, being able to take a break and do that, and I know that you've spent quite a lot of time in your Rift at one point in Minecraft. It was 24-hour sprint. We were doing an event. I think I did 12 hours myself in Minecraft, and so I can totally see you just 6 hours just sitting on the beach in VR.
Yeah, just chilling. I actually really want to get back into the Metacraft server and build myself a nice little place that I can get away to, because, I've got exams and study at the moment, and it'd be nice to just have somewhere that's relaxing and not associated with all of the bustle and hustle of my life.
I mean, that's
this is the kind of thing
basically
that
what you're chosen in the end.
Well, I did that. Well, I did that with Dear Esther. I purposely played the entire game standing up, moving my feet. When I'm walking, I was moving my feet, and it was amazing. I got completely turned around in my room. I didn't realize it, but that. So I understand what you're saying. Now I can change my mind on, okay, maybe more people will get this for their house once they experience what it can bring to it. But I don't see that as early on. I can see that later on.
Yeah, I certainly think this is a 5 years out kind of thing.
Scott?
Yeah, and in the end, you can just put on your Rift, get in your Omni or Cyber Rift or any device that allows you to walk around, and then you can go on a little trip. Like you can be at any beach in the world, or you can walk around on top of Mount Everest if you want. It's not necessarily that you just want to be there all the time, but I think just being there, being able to walk around, see things from a different perspective, and like having the feeling of physically being there is going to be a great thing for applications like virtual tourism.
I'm going to go ahead and move on to the second story, and it's titled VR Game Design Workshop for Kids. And so, Skyworkxx, this was an initiative that did you lead it, or tell us all about it?
No, so actually it's an initiative led by a German organization called Schülerforschungszentrum Sachsen e.V., which, well, it sounds very German, and that literally translates into Student Resource Center Saxony. Our workshop was basically about game design, and since we had access to an Oculus Rift, we just made it virtual reality game design. So basically what we did is it was a 5-day workshop, so it's sort of small, like a small game jam. So we in the first day we just discussed about ideas. We showed the kids the Oculus Rift. We showed them several games, showed them what they can do with the Rift. I think one of the games they liked the most was Super Mega Mega, which I personally think is a great idea for a VR game, even though it's basically just a side scroller. So after the first day, we had several ideas, and I think the best one was a dentist simulator. So that the dentist simulator was made by I think he was the youngest, and I don't know, to me it felt like he's sort of trying to get over, I don't know, a horrible experience when he's going to the dentist. Yeah. And so either he's trying to get over it, or he is trying to make everybody feel like him when he's going to the dentist. I don't know, but I think it was just such a great idea because he completely understood what the Rift is capable of. So basically, you tilt your head to avoid that mean dentist that's trying to drill your tooth.
Really interesting. Do you guys have any questions about this or thoughts, Nuke?
Yeah, about the dentist, what I was wondering is, like, what were y'all doing for the sound? Because that would be kind of cool if you had one of those fake mannequin heads with the microphones in the ears and you play the drill.
No, so basically, what the kids wanted is that the drill sounds very mean and like a typical sort of stereotype dentist drill. And since we used the Unity engine, we just used something called 3D sound. So if it's further away from your head, it's a lot quieter, and this works great because the distance is quite big. So when the drill comes near you, it becomes really loud and scares you a lot. So I think the sound is one of the best things. And if you download the game from our website, just definitely try it with headphones. It's such a good experience with it.
Right, I was just thinking about the virtual barber chair that most of us have listened to, and it just reminded me that would be just such a great implementation in that game you're talking about.
Yeah, that would be really great.
I actually taught a group of kids game design. They were 13 to 17 one time as well, but it was pre-Oculus Rift. I'm so jealous.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, when I was a kid, it was all in BASIC, unfortunately, or that, whatever the heck it is where you do the drawing.
QBasic.
Logo.
What I was doing.
There you go.
Logo.
I was just going to say, I remember doing workshops like this as a kid for things like, physics and chemistry, and getting to go off and do really cool things, and they were really, like, defining experiences as a child. Like, they really kind of set things in there. And I think it's something that's really amazing.
When I was 10, learning the program on a Commodore PET and stuff like that, it's not the same as the kids. Like my daughter's got like 6 and she's already playing in virtual reality. It's just not fair.
And I would encourage, as well as Skyworkxx would, to get involved in this sort of way. To find a group of kids, at a Boys and Girls Club. That's what I used to work for many years, teaching kids technology. So this sort of thing is exactly what I've done with the Lego Mindstorms and going to tournament with them and all that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, get involved, bring some VR stuff, and do it with kids, and it'll be a great experience. So for everybody watching, if you're thinking about that stuff, do it. And if you want more information, ping me or ping Skyworkxx on Reddit. So I also wanted to talk about your game, Darkfield, and we can discuss, space sims, the genre as a whole, and I'll let you lead that. Skyworkxx.
Yeah, well, there are many space games out there, and we know that. I think sort of VR is sort of a renaissance for space games and space simulators. Since space games or games where you're inside a cockpit are just at the moment the best game you can do with an Oculus Rift. I mean, you're in a seated environment, and you have a cockpit in front of you, so you have a really great sense of depth with all those switches and all the buttons and the windscreen inside a cockpit. So, but what differs, like what makes Darkfield different from all the other games is that, well, we started out as a one-man project. It was just me in the end, and then right now there are two other guys working on it. Mm-hmm. It's Daniel Potts and Martin Bayer. So we're just a small indie game company, and I think we can try to have ideas that are a bit different from what the other big ones are doing. They're not in right now in our alpha, but we will include some mechanics that might be greatly different. So I think space games are a very great fit for VR right now, and that's why there's so many out there at the moment.
They're easy to make comfortable with because there's no ground. It's fairly amorphous, right?
Yeah, that as well, especially in the DK1. People, I've never heard of anyone getting sick in Darkfield, because there's no horizon that you have to that you can actually look at. So you always feel like you're the right way up inside space.
Anybody else have a thought on space sims? And whoever would like to ask a question, there's 2 microphones on each side of the room. If you wouldn't mind lining up, I'll then call on you to read your question, and we will go from there. And I hope there's at least one person that wants to ask a question, because the problem with nobody asking a question means I'm just going to keep rambling and talking until somebody asks a question.
Zombie Stormtrooper.
So yeah, I'm Cause and Effects. I have a question for the developers and the panel. I was curious on what you're thinking about for publishing. Are you gonna self-publish, or are you gonna try and go through Steam or whatever that Facebook does, or a little column A, a little column B, or Kickstarter, that kind of stuff? What did you guys have in mind? Thanks.
Start with Jesse.
Well, Steam is a great option, of course. I mean, there's lots of people on there, although currently it wouldn't be the place for a VR experience. I mean, I just put Snowdrift up on Oculus Share because it's the place that I can think of the most VR-oriented people going. And so I think that's a good idea even after a commercial launch. But other channels as well, Steam would be great. And self-publishing yourself. I mean, there's no reason not to also sell it on your own website.
Do that. I think you can buy Lunar Flight on Steam and I think on his own website or Humble Bundle or something. And then there are so many other games, even smaller games, Prison Architect, or even bigger games, Prison Architect, where basically you can buy the game on Steam and on the website and on probably many other places as well. So I think for indie devs it's especially hard to get on Steam though. I mean, we've been trying to, we're having a Steam Greenlight campaign that we actually stopped advertising because 60-70% of all the votes said no, we don't want this game on Steam Greenlight.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you might be right that at the moment VR games, and especially small indie VR games, are not a good fit for a platform that consists most of people that have never heard of Oculus Rift.
Yeah, that's so true. I'm surprised though to find out it was that's severe.
I think at this point your route to Steam is more if you can get some really significant buzz going in the community, and if you can get Palmer or John Carmack or all of these people have Twitter accounts, if you get them tweeting, hey, I tried out this guy's game, you might have Valve reaching out to you to go, hey, do you want to put your game on Steam, and that might be a route in at the moment for VR. There's still a lot of opportunity to generate buzz in the press, maybe not so much as there was really early on, when you saw things like Guillotine Simulator being covered by New York Times, which I don't think would happen if it was released today.
But I also think Steam is going a different route soon. There's been this rumor going on since the last Steam Dev Days that was basically that they want to change that Greenlight model into sort of more self-publishing model. I'm not sure how it's going to work, but they're definitely aware of the problem that many small games can't get on Steam, or that just can't generate enough publicity to get enough votes or the right votes.
All right, so last topic, really just wanted to go around the table, have everybody plug whatever they want to plug. We'll start on my right with Jespionage.
Thanks. So this week we're going to be releasing the first version of the VR Chat SDK. So this is an unannounced thing so far, but it should give custom characters and custom locations and custom animations for any custom character in there, and some limited interactivity in the world and stuff like that as well for anyone who wants to build their own environment.
All right, congratulations on that. And
thank you.
It's awesome. We'll be definitely utilizing that. Skyworkxx?
Well, thanks. So, we're developing Darkfield VR, which is a space dogfighting game for the Oculus Rift. So if you want to check it out, go to our website, darkfield-vr.com. But the other thing I want to plug is like a story that I was talking earlier about, is the education for kids, especially in games and VR. If you want to read more about the workshop, I wrote a little entry on our site. That's darkfield/VR or -vr.com/kids.
All right, and Additives, how about you?
So I've been developing a procedural dungeon crawler called Dungeon Smash for anyone who's ever played Dreadhalls and wanted to blow up the monsters instead of run away from them. We have a build that's up available on my website at the moment. I put a link in the Reddit thread for this show, or you can go to thebigbot.com, which is my dev blog, and you can find out more about it there.
Thebigbot.com?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Nuke, what do you have?
All right, I'll just again plug Janus VR, so you can get that from janusvr.com. That's from James McRae. Go to the Reddit site VR Sites, and that'll be all the any room that people post. And if you're into the more adult-oriented, we now started the XXX VR Sites.
Yeah, it's been great having you guys on. So that's basically going to wrap it up. So I'll see everybody next time on Virtually Incorrect with me, Gunter. It's been a pleasure. Thanks to all the guests in the audience. Thanks to the Riftmax team, and to Roger Essig, who provided this great art behind me, and to all the authors and commenters of the stories that were presented tonight. And finally, a big thank you to the whole damn VR community. I love this place, and you guys rock. And thank you, good night.